You talked a little bit about this already, but what was this maybe something you knew you wanted to do in high school or college, or like you just, or maybe you had like a completely different path you thought you were gonna take?
I did not know this at all. No. I I knew that teaching was I haven't really thought about it. I mean, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I mean, or maybe that was like also the easiest thing to go for. Like right out of college, like I didn't know where, New York City was scary to me. I wasn't going to move to New York, even though I grew up outside of the city. I was in college in Ohio, so I had to get out of Ohio. I was an East Coast guy. So teaching was the thing I knew. And private school teaching, you don't need any accreditation. So it was like a boom, boom, like let's just go teach at a private
Mhm.
school. I think basically to buy some time. Um, and knowing that I was going to be in an environment that I was comfortable with, familiar with. I loved reading. Uh, but no, I didn't know in college what I knew what I liked, but I had no idea how to translate that. And it was a problem because again, theater, I love theater, but I didn't really want to make a living out of it.
Mhm.
So that all kind of was a very gradual process. And moving to New York, honestly, if we're kind of talking the high school, how do when do you know? That was the hardest year of my life by far. Moving out of the school environment, the very cushy school environment, into New York City, bottom of the, pecking order in terms of kind of entering television. Was it advertising, television, feature films? I just didn't like any of it. Um, and so it was a real soul searching. What am I doing here? And when you live in a place like New York City, when you walk on the street, everyone seems to know where they're going. They all
Mhm.
have like somewhere to go. And you're like, wow, I don't really have a job today. You're just going out to get, some orange juice or something. Um, so it was tough. That was a tough year until I found a decent, kind of independent gig. It's all freelance stuff, freelance, freelance, freelance. And then there was an opening at CTW, a Children's Television Workshop. And the moment I was there, it's like, this is it. This is kind of, I had done the whole swath of production. As I said, industrials, feature films, advertising, PR, stuff like that. Didn't like it all. And then the moment I walked in those doors, I'm like, these are my people. You're kind of looking for
Mhm.
people.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's so important because we're always expected to know exactly what we want to do in high school, but I don't get how that's possible because you're still a child, but I think you're such an amazing example of how like you don't necessarily need to know exactly what you want to do and still be able to impact so many people and do so many great things. But
Thank you.
yeah, and yeah. Sorry?
I said thank you. That's very nice.
Yeah, no, because it really is really inspiring in that way. And I can imagine that like this journey hasn't been easy. If you're comfortable to share, have there been any obstacles or something you think has helped you or just been a hurdle to get where you are today?
Well, if when my model is probably not as viable as it is today. I was on staff at Sesame Workshop for 15 years and then went back for another 4 years for this project called Penwapa, which was a global citizenry project with Muppets and stuff. Very cool project, which failed. But that there's a huge amount of security in that. Since 2001 or even 1999, somewhere in there, have been freelance. So freelance is hard. I moved up to Maine. You live in New York City, like there's always somebody to meet. There's always somebody to talk to. There's always somebody else who knows somebody else, and you just keep doing that. I moved to Maine thinking like there will be people to talk to. And there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. Funny story. I move up here. I walk into Maine Public Broadcasting, the PBS station, and I'm kind of like, you know I'm from New York City. I'm from Sesame Street, okay? And guess what? I'm here with you. And they're like, we do hunting shows. I'm like, no,
Mhm.
you're not hearing me. But there was just no crossover at all with my experience and what's important up here. Uh,
Mhm.
so being an independent contractor, being freelance, you become very dependent on your relationships and on your reputation. And sometimes that can be overflowing, and sometimes it can be really hard, especially when I'm not in New York City or I'm not in Washington, to constantly keep that rhythm, keep that dynamic going. I'm up here. So it can be doubly hard. But I've got the freedom to be my own boss and to start something like Meridian Stories, find something to start and see if I can build that passion out. So it's a trade-off. It's hard.
So obviously now your career is kind of oriented around education. Would you mind sharing what your educational journey was like to get to where you're at right now?
Yeah, I loved my undergraduate experience. I then, when I started teaching, got a master's degree in literature, which I also loved. I mean, what's more fun than spending your summers reading novels with some of the brightest people in the world and discussing them? Um, and then when I was in New York at the workshop, I was able to get a second master's at Teachers College, Columbia University, um, because the company paid for it. It was part of the staff thing. So it was kind of like, wait a minute, if they're going to pay my tuition, then I should go find something to study. And it was communication technology and education up at Columbia. That's been my formal pathways there. I've loved pretty much every class I've ever taken. And I've loved how it's made me think. I like teaching people to think, and I like people to teach me to think. So that's.
But do you have any advice for maybe high schoolers out there, just in general,
I think it's, to your point, don't let the people around you freak you out about what you should be doing. That's their stuff, not your stuff.
Mhm.
And to support that, the world is so unpredictable right now. Part of the book I wrote recently is, there's a whole chapter on the culture of omnipresent change. That is what we're living in right now. So whereas I was able to envision what I wanted to be, even though I, couldn't, but still the choices were there. The options, television or publishing or education. Those options are not as clear cut by any means. And technology continues to change what those options are and what is the digital economy and how viable is it. And, so not knowing what you want to be is actually a pretty good thing, because you don't know what's going to be available actually by the time you are ready to make that kind of move. So don't give in to external pressures. And yes, you probably can, back to the passion thing. You can probably identify your one passion. And maybe it's at this point in your life, it's sports, it's basketball. Okay, now you're not going to be a professional basketball player, but still there's a lot going on in sports management. It's a huge industry. Expand on that for your own sake and find two other, correlative passions. And then oh, well, maybe I want to be an agent. Maybe I want to be a sports agent. That's how that all fits together, but yeah, that would be my advice, is
Yeah.
withstand the pressure. And the argument can be back to your parents, to whomever is kind of trying to straitjacket you into make a call here, my friend. Is things are changing at too fast a pace out there. So you want to be open to whatever. It used to be changed by a generation, then by the decade, then by the year. Now it's literally by month to month in terms of what's shifting in the world of entertainment or business or media or etc.